Fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That's right, the author who you see all of the books behind me there, that terrible, terrifying tower. That is right. Welcome to the horror show. You can just call me Fuego for short, and yes, I am so very stoked that you've joined me here for another edition of my twice weekly programming here, where, yeah, we talk everything El Rey, as I so affectionately call him, Mr. Sai King, and this is another little bit of anniversary coverage for all of you that I hinted at briefly during my 10th anniversary edition, which discussed none other than Just After Sunset, but it was the oldest story in Just After Sunset, a story that actually saw its initial publication in kind of a fragmented form in 1977, and then got its full revised edition in none other than, that's right, 1978. So we are talking 40 years ago. Sai King published a story entitled The Cat from Hell. That's right, The Cat from Hell. And so, yeah, it's not like official anniversary coverage, because when King first put this story out, it was with Cavalier in March of 1977. And so they had this interesting idea where they were like, okay, we want you to not finish the story, Stephen King. We want you to basically do almost like a choose your own adventure sort of thing, where you rate the predominance of it and then the readers vote, kind of like what they did, if you ever read Death in the Family, you know, the whole Batman storyline where they were going to kill Jason Todd, the second Robin, and they're like, do you want him to live? Do you want him to die? Also, like, I still remember so many of those choose your own adventure books. Like Pinocchio was one that I had from Disney that was amazing, and they had all of these, like, they would get to certain points in the story and they're like, okay, based on what you think Pinocchio should do here, Pinocchio being one of my absolute all-time favorite stories ever, shout out to the long deceased Italian Mr. Carlo Collodi, but they would have you jump to a certain page, and depending on what you chose, things wouldn't necessarily work out good, and there was like the one that really kept the story going, and so on. But I digress. Basically, when The Cat from Hell was initially published in 1977 in March, they had all the readers submit just different variations of how they thought the story should end, and this story being about a elderly, like, pharmaceutical guy who was living with his sister, his sister's best friend, and then they also had, you know, just like a caretaker, butler of sorts and stuff. And so there were 4 people initially at this, like, not even mansion, we're talking like beyond mansion, like a castle practically. And this guy has so much money from, you know, selling all of these different, you know, drugs and so on, and then, you know, engineered, you know, chemically drugs and stuff like that. We're not talking like, you know, grown in the ground or anything like, you know, Mary Jay-Z or mushrooms or anything like that. But so this guy, basically this aging man, when this cat has come and wreaked havoc on his household, and the reasoning behind it, as we find out in the story, is because of the fact that one drug in particular that is a tranquilizer, a painkiller, and a mild hallucinogen that they give to these like super terminal like cancer patients and stuff like that. I guess they did the predominance of the testing, if not all of the testing, on felines, for the sheer fact that, you know, the way their nervous system, you know, is made up and stuff, it was like the most viable candidate, and where they were able to assess the best data and stuff. And so the numbers differ between the Tales from the Darkside adaptation, which was scripted by George Romero but adapted from the Sai King short, but we're talking in the thousands. So, you know, it's in the thousands in you know, the film, and then it's in the tens of thousands, I believe 15,000 over 15,000 in the short story, or at least in the revised edition, which is what we have here in Just After Sunset. But yeah, so this guy basically consults a professional hitman who has killed like a couple dozen men and women, and you know, he's a one stick, he's a lone cat, not a lone wolf. I guess that terminology wouldn't necessarily work here, but he has never had anything traced to him. He's obviously very slick in the murderous things that he does, and he comes highly recommended. And so this aging pharmaceutical baron of sorts consults this guy to kill this crazy, it's a black cat in you know, in the Tales from the Darkside film, the third segment in that Tales from the Darkside film, and we'll briefly talk about that near the end of the video. But it's described in the short story, which you know, I just did that anniversary coverage of this, and so I reread these stories, and it's described in the source material as having like this half white, half black face, and it's much more intricately, you know, described. And it's interesting because comparing the short story with the segment in the film, I should say, which is only like 20-something minutes, so it is, you know, it's basically just like what we saw with the Tales from the Darkside TV series. That I started some anniversary, just kind of episode by episode coverage of, similar to what I did with Tales from the Crypt a couple of years ago now, and I was not feeling Tales from the Darkside, the TV series, especially when you compare it with something as sophisticated and classic as The Twilight Zone, or as brutal and campy and R-rated over the top as we saw in Tales from the Crypt on HBO. It was like, the Tales from the Darkside TV series that George Romero was inspired to produce and start putting together after Creepshow that he worked on with King, the TV series just really fell short and felt very softened and defanged and declawed, to quote Local H. Shout out to Nick Oakes. Yeah, to quote Local H, defanged and declawed was how that series felt to me, and it's a very poignant reference here. But yeah, the R-rated feature film has its moments of gore that are good. I'm not particularly fond of, I think it's Lot 249, based on a Arthur Conan Doyle story, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to be specific, and then the last story is based on a Japanese folktale. But you know, once again, we will get to that. Very faithful adaptation though, I have to say. But for me, the premise of this story has always bordered on the silly. And Stephen King's short stories he'll do something really, 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 really good, and then he'll do something where I just laugh and shake my head. And this was especially true in not the early stuff, which is kind of funny how this wasn't included in Night Shift, you know, or Skeleton Crew, or Nightmares and Dreamscapes, you know, not even Everything's Eventual. It wasn't collected properly until Just After Sunset, when it was a 30-year-old story by that point. So, I don't know, just the entire idea of a pharmaceutical mogul hiring a professional hitman to kill this cat that he is certain has been responsible for the demise of that caretaker slash butler, his sister, and his sister's friend, all in rather plausible ways, you know? I mean, the sister, the cat presumably knocks it down the stairs, trips it up, and this sister loved this cat, was the one that, when it first showed up, and, you know, the caretaker butler dude is like trying to, you know, throwing rocks at it, and like, let's get rid of it, so on and so forth. The sister was the one who's like, no, I'm gonna give it saucers of milk, and I'm gonna hang on to it and stuff, and then she dies under these mysterious circumstances, and our main dude who was hiring this hitman is like, no, I'm positive it was the cat. And then later on, the whole urban legend about how cats can like just hush the breath of babies, you know, they will, when a toddler is in a crib, a cat has been known to jump on a child and like press its body against the mouth and like just, you know, stop it from being able to take in more air. And that's what he theorizes happens with the sister's friend. And then that's where this old mogul is positive the cat is malicious and has been sent to avenge all of the, you know, all these little kitties that he killed in all of those testings and trials and stuff, and they put it in a basket. They send it out with, you know, this guy who's worked for the family for a very long time, and then there's a car accident, and so everything is tied back to the cat, and this older dude is positive it's responsible. And so that's why he's like, okay, I gotta go for the best. And in the book, he's like, okay, I'll give you 3,000 now and 3,000 after you give me its tail and I can throw it in the fire. And then for the updated version, Tales from the Darkside, the movie, came out in 1990. So we're talking many decades of inflation later. He's like, yes, it's $100,000 for the kill. And so, silly premise. Like I said, I don't know, this has always been just one of those King stories that never did for me. The source material is better because you do peer into the head of this hitman a lot more so. And the fact that he likes cats. He relates to cats, you know? He's like, yeah, they're like the hitman of, or hit women or whatever, you know, the hit pussies of the animal world. And the fact that even small little domesticated cats, they still never get that wild ferociousness out of them, which is why, you know, they show up at your doorstep with some kill in their mouths to present to you. Present them, like on that South Park episode with Ms. Chokes on Drick. But yeah, like I said, I have never been particularly fond of this story. But it's interesting because in June of 1977, after the initial March publication, it was published with Mark Rains, who I'm presuming is the reader that, you know, got the nod, and Cavalier, and I'm not sure, it didn't specify in any of my research on Wikipedia and a few other Reddits and stuff if this, if King had any say in who was chosen, or if it was just, you know, reader poll and go from there. And maybe that's why King wanted to, after that publication with the tacked on ending chosen by somebody else, do some rewriting and reframe it. The story is only like 20 something pages, you know, so it's fairly short. I think I read it in less than 30 minutes, you know, sat down, you know, I actually reread it right before watching the short story, or the short segment in Tales from the Darkside, the movie, and, you know, doing this video and whatnot. But so yeah, I think that's why King wanted to refashion it and do some reworking and stuff. And that's why we have this 40-year anniversary in 1978, because in Tales of Unknown Horror and also in Year's Finest Fantasy, this story was republished in both of those collections in King's updated version, but then it also saw two other publications in a couple different collections. It was in Magic Cats with an exclamation point in 1984, and then also in 1996, Twists of the Tale, an anthology of cat horror. So, and then it was also, you know, obviously besides Just After Sunset, which I was just showing you guys, it also was printed as a bonus story in some editions of Doomakey, one of my absolute favorite Stephen King stories. It's in my top 10 ever. I love Doomakey. But main thing that we have to jump to now is the fact that in 1990, George Romero, it was Michael McDowell who scripted the other two segments and the wraparound, and what Tom Savini, who I was blessed to interview 2 years ago, said is the official real third installment of the Creepshow film franchise. There's a Creepshow 3, which is garbage trash, and that I'm going to be covering at some point in the upcoming future for films that forgot the face of their father, because, yeah, the rights lapsed to some degree, and some direct-to-video fools did a Creepshow 3, which was absolutely god-awful, had nothing to do with Romero, nothing to do with Cy King. But, yeah, Tales from the Darkside, the movie, aka Creepshow 3, according to Savini and a lot of the Romero proteges. It was directed by a Romero protege who had worked on, I believe, Dawn and Day, had also helped out with the Tales from the Darkside series. Scripted by Michael McDowell. I did not like, as I mentioned earlier, Lot 249, which was based on the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, the same guy who wrote all the Sherlock Holmes tales and created the character. For my money, though, and this is maybe one of the reasons why I wanted to do this little anniversary episode, I love the third segment in Tales from the Darkside so flippin' much. My God, is it good. It's called Lover's Vow. And as I said earlier, based on a Japanese folk tale of sorts, and it's about this guy who's a struggling artist in New York, painter, and he goes and he sits down with his agent at this bar, and he's super faded, gets a ride back to his flat, his loft of sorts, his creator's corner, and he encounters a gargoyle. And the scene with this gargoyle chopping this dude's head off in an alley, the effects are great, Savini doing them, obviously, and the twist of this story is phenomenal. And I must say, for the fun wraparound with the middle brother from the Lawrence family, so not Joey, whoa, you know, or the young kid who, I don't know what the hell else the youngest brother of the Lawrence family was in, but I was thinking Brotherly Love, and they had that guy who was like, making them spaghetti sandwiches when the kids are grounded and stuff, and he's like, I never thought a spaghetti sandwich would taste so good, and I think it's like Ed Asner maybe, he's like, tricks the mayonnaise, so funny. But you got the middle Lawrence brother, Matthew Lawrence, and he's super young, and Debbie Harry from Blondie of all people is this modern day witch, and she has him locked in this cage, and she's gonna cook him for a dinner party that she's doing, and he distracts her by, I don't know how he has this big book. I didn't rewatch the entire film, so maybe they give some reference as to how he has this book so he can read these tales to her to distract her and eventually try to push her into the oven. I won't, you know, say if he is successful or not, but man, Lover's Vow is so badass, and especially since I didn't really like The Cat from Hell that much, and really not the biggest fan of Lot 240, whatever. Man, the wraparound is so damn good, and the third story is great. I will say, with working with the sort of source material that they had on hand, Romero does script something pretty cool, especially visually. We get a lot of POVs of the cat, and the cat has like the purple like outlining, you know, vision and stuff like that. And the gore, when we get it, is actually quite good. The cat like goes attacking the crotch of the hitman and stuff, and then there is a particular scene with a cat trying to crawl down somebody's throat that is dope. And it's right out of the story, and it's very, very well done. And really, as I said, you know, a little while ago in this video, this is a very faithful adaptation, with the exception of changing the setting of the final confrontation and also the fate of one character in particular. This is really faithful, and it's well shot. It's a beautiful, ginormous mansion of a house bordering castle, as I mentioned, and whereas the short story starts immediately with Hitman walking into the castle, sitting down and talking to the aging pharmaceutical mogul, you get a little bit beforehand, you know, dude like arriving in the taxi and whatnot, and you know, there's just some very mild alterations, but for the most part, this is a very faithful adaptation, albeit of a story that I'm not incessantly fond of. So yeah, I mean, I would probably recommend I recommend the hell out of Just After Sunset, as I said during my anniversary issue or episode of this program, and so hey, if you're gonna check out this short story, I definitely recommend checking out all the other amazing, much different in tone shorts. If you want to see my entire thoughts on Just After Sunset, it's here in the Stephen King themed episode playlist on the horror show. And also, Tales from the Darkside, the movie, The Real Creepshow 3, as Savini proclaimed it. And it's got a hell of a cast. I mean, Deborah Harry, it's got Christian Slater, you know, William Hickey, boy, Steve Buscemi, Julianne Moore. It's got some really, really solid talent in it. And perhaps you would like those two stories better than I did, even if I think Lover's Vow is the absolute best one. And do you really like this short story very much? Has anybody ever read the original incarnation with the Mark Rains? Who knows how different it is, you know, who knows how much King decided to alter and so on and so forth. I'm honestly really curious to try to track that down, because yes, it was published again in Gent volume number 18, and it was actually co-credited to Mark Rains. So this is a slightly shorter episode of Hail to Stephen King for the sheer fact that it's Thanksgiving week. I have a bunch of stuff that I'm going to be filming with the horror show this weekend. We're trying to get caught up on a lot of different film reviews as we approach the end of the year, because we want to make sure every single just worthy film to put into the consideration for our best of 2018 is given its proper look. Oh boy, just this week I watched Winchester, I watched Truth or Dare, I watched Cam, So yeah, I've been busy, and I've been, you know, just spending some nice time with family and so on. So what am I thankful for? What can I give a grande gracias? As I always like to say, I am so very thankful for the Hail to Stephen King Ka-Tet, because our Facebook group is amazing, over 300 members, and we enjoy such wonderful, enlightening palaver together. Yeah, it's been responsible for meeting some amazing people this past year, and I can rattle off a ton of different names, you know, but I don't want to give anybody a specific bit of recognition, because I always try to do that on, you know, on the Facebook group. So if you want to be a part of that, make sure to jump on Facebook, if anybody still jumps on Facebook. I still go on it for this particular group, and I'm the sole admin and the moderator. I accept everybody pretty much. All that I ask is that we keep the discussion strictly Sai King, although I have been thinking about a Fright-tastic Friday freakout kind of thing, where maybe on Fridays we can post about other scarific stuff that we've been checking out and enjoy or want to recommend to other people. Give me some feedback in the comments below if you think that that would be a fun thing for the Facebook group. And yes, I also have to give a shout out to the only cat that I can say I truly loved, well, besides Nemo, who ran away on me and my ex-girlfriend like a decade or so ago. I like that cat, but Lily's cat Rusio, he's a pretty cool little kitty, and so yeah, shout out to that feline, and also to everybody who tuned into this video. That grande gracias once more. I have been Jaime in Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube for Infuegotainment, where there is a recent review of fantastic beats and where to drop them, The Crimes of Grindelwald, and yeah, there's also reviews oncoming of Ralph Wrecks the Internet, and also Creed 2, which will be pretty fun. I covered the non-scarific stuff there, just relaunched that programming, and as we get closer to the beginning of the year of 2019, you will get some Patreon information from me if you have something non-scarific that you would like me to review, or if you just want access to all of that exclusive requested stuff. It's going to be a very cool destination for additional Fuego stuff if you're into that. Most importantly though, since you're watching this on the horror show, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell so you get all of the notifications anytime we put up one of our 2 to 3 episodes a day on the horror show. Not the best horror YouTubers, because there are so many others that we respect, from you know, from Cody to Lee to you know, Brian from Horror Show Entertainment, various others, and man, I gotta say, we try to be the most prolific though, although I gotta say, my dude Jason from Sinister Cinema, he gives us a run for our money all by his solo-ness too. So yes, once again, until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, I will say hasta luego, sin amigos, and constant readers and viewers alike. I hope that we get to connect with one another as we approach this holiday season sooner rather than later. Stay tuned for at the end of this month, when we will be discussing live and in-depth Pet Sematary, which is the November book of the month. And I guess I should announce it right now. December book of the month, it's The Stand. Get a heads up now on it. The Stand celebrated here in 1978 its 40th anniversary. It's in my top 3 along with Pet Sematary and it for anything Sai King has ever done. So if you've already finished Pet Sematary and you want to get a leg up on that 1,000+ page monster, that's right. The Stand is going to be our spoiler discussion for the Hail to Stephen King Book Club here at the end of the month. So until the next installment, Hail Ka-Tet, hashtag Hail Ka-Tet. Remember, stay scared and read Stephen King just after sunset. I'm gonna double down, y'all, because even though I'm not the biggest fan of The Cat from Hell, it is that damn good.